Talks between Ukraine and Russia in Istanbul have ended with an agreement to exchange prisoners. The talks lasted less than an hour. Details are still emerging, but both sides have agreed to exchange prisoners of war and detained civilians. Kyiv has also offered to hold a leaders' summit aimed at ending the war by the end of August. Al Jazeera's Sinem Koseoglu joins us now live from Istanbul. Sinem, what more can you tell us about what has emerged from this latest round of talks?
Well, Mohammed, it is the third round and it is not much different from the second and the first round of the talks. But of course, there are small steps that have been taken. First, the Russian side announced that the humanitarian agreements have been fulfilled, which is a positive sign, and both sides have agreed on more prisoners of war exchange and more bodies of soldiers exchange. Also, alongside with the soldiers, civilians will be exchanged as well, especially the issue that Ukraine has been very determined about the children's repatriation, but the Russian side doesn't call it child repatriation, they call it civilian exchange. We heard, as you have mentioned, the Ukrainians offering again the same thing, a leaders summit, a leaders meeting in Istanbul to finalize the deal. But as we have been mentioning for a couple of months, both sides have very different terms when it comes to ceasefire, when it comes to diplomatic solution and many other things. And while Ukrainians totally demand Zelenskyy-Putin meeting is necessary to end the war, the Russians say first we have to, again they are repeating the same thing, we have to agree on the steps, and then the presidents can only come together just to sign a peace deal. While the Ukrainians have been asking for a ceasefire, Russians have always demanded that peace first, then ceasefire. And we heard the Russian side, Mr. Medinsky, saying that they have suggested Ukraine for short ceasefire, because the Russians believe that when there is a ceasefire, Ukrainians will build up and start the offensive again, but they want it to be ended properly. Also, the Russian side announced they have asked for 3 working groups to be established, to be working online, and the contacts to continue. There are small steps. Whether these will pave the way for a permanent peace or future peace is still unknown. But tonight, a 34-minute meeting between the two sides ended almost as before.
All right, that's Al Jazeera's Sinem Koseoglu joining us live from Istanbul. Thanks so much, Sinem. People in Ukraine are gathering to protest for a second night in a row against a new anti-corruption law. Thousands of people look to the streets in Kyiv and other cities after President Zelenskyy signed the bill into law on Tuesday night. The law gives the government more control over 2 key anti-corruption agencies in Ukraine. Zelenskyy says that's needed to root out alleged Russian influence and improve efficiency, but that's done little to quell concerns. Rory Challands reports from Kyiv.
Day 2 of this new protest movement in Ukraine, and it has grown. Certainly more people here in Kyiv than there were last night. And across the country, yesterday, there were protests in 4 cities. Tonight, they're scheduled to take place in at least 17, even in Warsaw, in neighbouring Poland. And it's come seemingly from nowhere. It was only yesterday that the President's office rushed through a piece of draft legislation in the Rada that removes the independence of 2 anti-corruption bodies, basically placing them under the auspices of the Prosecutor General's office. And the Prosecutor General is a political appointee made by the President. So you can easily see what that does for the independence of corruption prosecutions in Ukraine. It has dismayed many people here who feel that the progress that has been made in this country since the Maidan revolution of 12 years ago is in danger of being rolled back by President Zelenskyy. They see this as a naked power grab. Is he listening to these protesters? Well, he might be. He hasn't vetoed that legislation yet, but he has proposed that he is going to put through a new piece of presidential legislation that would guarantee the independence of those anti-corruption bodies. Now, is that going to be enough? It might be difficult to put the genie back in the bottle because something has broken in Ukraine for at least as long as the full-scale Russian invasion. There's been a consensus here that political protest perhaps was unwise and that national unity was most important in the face of the Russian invasion. Well, that consensus has broken, and it remains to be seen whether President Zelensky's move to perhaps roll back on his decision is going to cut any sway with the protesters here. Rory, Challands, Al Jazeera, Kyiv in Ukraine.